Ever since he had been a kid, Ed the sheep wanted to be a lion. How nice it would be, Ed thought, to be on the top of the food chain for a change, to lie in the shade, waiting for the lionesses to drop a fresh kill in front of him. Oh, to yawn, growling, and showing that mouthful of 3-inch ivory fangs. Oh, to just eat undisturbed without having to look up and around while chewing, so worried by the constant threat of predators that the shadows of vultures alarmed Ed and seemed to Ed to be the end of the world. Ed knew that wandering off the right path would not change him into a lion, although in his younger days he had done just that. He had found that rabbits, for example, would run for their lives when they saw a mad, dirty sheep lumbering after them. One of these times, if it hadn't been for several whacks with the shepherd's staff, instead of having become a lion, he would have been eaten by a lion who had been waiting on a ledge above him to leap on him that was pointed out to him by the shepherd, who was just shaking his head. Walking on the right pathway up to the mountain pastures in the summer didn't do anything, however, for Ed to still the thrill of pouncing on those skittish bunnies. Ed, the sheep, just wanted to be a lion. Paying attention to the shepherd, that had always been a problem for Ed. The annual routine had always been tedious for Ed. From October through April, they grazed in green pastures that with the grass that kept up with their voracious appetites, but, well, wasn't anything to do all day except eat grass, and most of the time in the rain. And though summer meant a welcome change in venue for Ed, the trip up to the mountain pastures grew more difficult for him every year, since he wasn't particularly suited to climb mountains, and since the bruised shins and aching muscles and joints and shortness of breath made clambering up those rocky chasms a brutal ordeal, during which Ed the sheep lamented loudly and long that he was not a lion, that he was not the king of beasts, lying around and having the women folk serve his every whim. The shepherd was no help. Yes, the shepherd knew the way from the village to the mountains. There's no way a sheep would be able to figure that out. And the shepherd knew the time that it was right to head back up into the mountains. There was no way a flock of sheep was going to figure out, even with Robert's Rules of Orders, when was the time to head back up into the mountains. Left to their own devices, Ed knew the sheep would gnash at the grass till he devoured every last root, without a care in the world for creation or for future generations. And those who didn't die of starvation would be picked off by panthers. Ed knew that as a flock, sheep were just as dumb as posts, but he still wanted to be a lion. The shepherd, he tried to engage the adult sheep in teaching the flock the way of the sheep. Obey the shepherd, follow the shepherd, stay close to the flock. Graze in the mud during the rainy season. Make the journey into the mountains in the summer. The whole boring annual ritual. Kids are rambunctious, Ed protested during one of the shepherd's weekly sermons. They want to run and play. They want to see the world like me. Why don't you take us somewhere more interesting like Hawaii? The shepherd was patient but firm. Sheep are to take care of each other and teach each other my way. That's the meaning of a sheep's life. Oh, Ed hated hearing that week after week after week. Ed wanted to be a lion. A lot of the time, the shepherd, he didn't even seem to be around. Like, he didn't even seem to care. And several times the shepherd told the sheep, I have other sheep who don't belong to this fold, and I must bring them also, and they'll listen to my voice, and there'll be one flock and one shepherd. Well, Ed didn't care. Who cares if there's sheep in Africa? What's that to me? That's the shepherd's plan. This is not my plan. There were a lot of lion-hearted sheep like Ed in the part of the flock who wanted nothing to do with teaching the children, who wanted nothing to do with the weekly shepherd talks, who wanted nothing to do with the annual routine of going up into the mountains and grazing in the mud, who wanted nothing to do with sheep of any other kind. A lot of those sheep, they wandered off, and once in a while, the shepherd came back with them in his arms, bodies mauled by some beast, minds harmed by ingested chemicals from other fields, wool that was shorn out of season, turning the sheep into balls of yarn for a greedy owner of an ever-spinning woolen mill, and leaving those sheep bony and bare and shivering. And the shepherd would anoint their wounds with healing oil, though often they would die right in his arms. The flock gathered around to keep out the wind and the rain. Pathetic, thought Ed. He wanted to be a lion. It was difficult for Ed when, on the annual climb into the mountains, he broke a leg. The other sheep muscled by him, stumbled over him, having ignored them while fantasizing about being a lion his whole life long. They had no idea who Ed was. They just hurried by, knowing lingering behind the lost sheep with a lost sheep was a dangerous thing, which made Ed even more angry about everything. Rabbit-hearted idiots, he barked at them. Oh yes, we're very obedient to a shepherd, but when a guy is down, you just walk all over him. Which, of course, Ed had done himself his whole life long, knowing very well what was in the heart of a lion, knowing very well a lion would not care one little bit for a compassionate sheep who stayed behind to care for a sheep with a broken leg until the shepherd came. If the shepherd came. When Ed broke his leg, when the shadow of death had filled the valley, when the night itself seemed to growl with prowling beasts, the shepherd, he did come. Silently, suddenly, Ed was rapt. The ascent up the rest of the mountain was smooth, as if the shepherd knew every rock and every foothold, even in the dark. The night apparently was not dark to the shepherd, but was as bright as the day. Ed drifted off to the sleep and awoke in the warmth of a rising sun at the shore mountains before the snows come. And with that, the shepherd rose to gaze at the whole flock resting in the green pastures around him. I've got a lot to do today, Edward. Got some rest. Though you certainly could talk to the kids about me when they come curious with questions. Then smooth strides quickly took the shepherd away. Stopping he did occasionally amidst the rest of the wounded or dying sheep, moving swiftly further and further away to bring other sheep to the one fold, to the green pastures, to the still waters, to the abundant life creation was meant to provide for all the sheep. Ed understood the love of the shepherd only then.